The cameras died all at once. 1 second, every screen in the control booth showed neat squares of gray, doors, walkways, faces, hands. The next second, black. No picture. No sound. Just a red dot on each monitor like a dozen small eyes closing at the same time. Officer Rivera felt the whole tier stop breathing. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't run. He reached for the radio and said very calm, "Stand by." Out on the floor, the inmates didn't cheer, didn't shout, didn't move. They did the opposite. They went still. A cup that was halfway to a mouth froze in midair. A man who was turning to speak turned back. A heel that lifted settled again. The silence grew heavy, like a blanket pulled over a room. This was the war people never see. No swinging, no screaming, only thinking. The silent war, guards versus gangs in California's most secure facility. If the cameras stayed down, someone would try to win more ground without taking a step. If the cameras came back up, someone would pretend nothing had happened. Both sides were ready. Control to C tier. The speaker crackled. "We got a power dip. Hold position." Rivera watched the red light over the inner door, waiting for it to blink. It didn't. The light stayed hard and steady, a warning that meant everything and nothing. He lifted his eyes to the tier. Dante, older, careful, met his gaze for a half second, then looked away on purpose like a man not pointing at the weather. Across from Dante, Leo stayed seated. He was new, but he knew the first rule. When the room goes quiet, you listen to the quiet. He counted his breaths the way Nurse Tanya taught him. 4 in, 6 out. It slowed the shake in his hands. Then a soft sound slid along the concrete from the upper tier. Shoo. A mop? A shoe? It was too smooth to be either. Rivera felt it in his teeth. The hair on his arms lifted. The silent war had started its next round. The lights flickered once, twice. And held. The screen stayed black. "Count," Rivera said into his radio, voice cool as the floor. "Visual hold." The men didn't move. "That's where we are. Now rewind to the start of the day, to the first small push that led to this quiet cliff." The morning fog hugged the razor wire like wool. Pelican Bay looked like a drawing done in pencil, gray on gray on gray. Nurse Tanya pushed her med cart with 2 hands, tires squeaking a tiny E that sounded like a toy in a big empty church. She handed Leo a small cup. "Headaches?" she asked. "A little," he said. "Water?" she said. 4 in, 6 out. Shoulders down. She said it like a spell. Officer Rivera did his rounds, coffee cooling in his palm. The block ESHU ran on routine. Count, feed, yard, count, feed, sleep. But beneath the routine, other gears turned. Little ones. Quiet ones. That was the part of the job nobody put in the manual. He noticed the tiny things first. A cup handle turned in, not out. A bunk curtain pinned high instead of low. 2 younger men switching spots in the phone line with no words, no eyes. None of it broke a rule he could write. All of it meant something. Dante leaned down to Leo on the lower bunk. "Today will feel normal," he said. "It isn't." "What's wrong?" Leo asked. "Nothing," Dante said. "That's the problem." He meant the temperature felt too good, too calm, too even. It meant somebody on one side or the other had a plan, and the other side knew it. By yard time, the sky was the color of unshined steel. The fence hummed. The concrete held last night's cold. Lines formed like they always did. Older men took benches with backs to the wall, younger men clicked into 2 neat rows at the phones, a few stretched by the pull-up bars. It looked ordinary. It wasn't. Rivera paced the perimeter and practiced what his old field training officer had taught him. Look for the image that doesn't belong. Was it the man with new shoes who didn't scuff them? The man who usually joked and now didn't? The man staring at the tower glass like it might answer him? A folded kite, the size of a matchbox, touched a sneaker, brushed a drain, paused by a table leg. Nobody looked. Everybody saw. It was a test, not a message. Who would move for it? Who would not? The kite's path told as much as its words. The tower glass flashed once. In the booth, the warden lifted a phone and spoke softly to someone no one below could see. Deals lived between phones even when no one used the phones. "Today's about pressure," Dante said to Leo, eyes forward. "How much can they put on the line without snapping it?" "Who's they?" Leo asked. "Both sides," Dante said. "Us and them. And the line? That's the only thing keeping this yard from locking for a week." The yard's volume stayed low. Men moved like they had been rehearsing the same dance for years, which was true. "The silent war is really a long conversation," said without words, "about where the line is and how close you can stand to it." Back inside, the low part of the day slid in. Trays clinked. A trustee mopped in slow squares. The TV showed weather with the sound off, a map of clouds that looked like barbed wire. Nurse Tanya checked sleep okay? Next to 3 names. Rivera stood at the desk and watched the camera grid breathe. On screen he saw a hand lift a cup and set it down, handle out, green light, then another set it, handle in, hold. He saw a man who always sat by the TV choose the corner seat with the bad vent, signal, I'll take heat. He watched a door slot open a finger's width and close again, no transfer, just attention. He didn't write any of this in the log. He held it in his head the way you hold a song. The first high came at 3:17 p.m. on a dot. The red bar over the inner door flicked to steady. The speaker coughed. Program change pending, it said, dry as cardboard. Dante's jaw twitched. Here we go. Hear what goes? Leo asked. The part where they push, Dante said. And we decide if we bend. The gate buzzed. 2 officers wheeled a small cart with clear bins, search kit, gloves, mirrors, flashlights, swabs. Not a full shakedown, a pressure check. They didn't pick Cruz, the calm one. Too obvious. They picked a runner, quiet, young, 2 rows down. They emptied his mattress, shook his books, swabbed his vent. They found nothing. That was the point. Finding nothing can be a message. We can turn your room inside out anytime we want. Keep your people steady. The runner stood at the back wall, palms flat, eyes soft. He didn't blink at the mirror under his bed. He didn't flinch when a book's spine was bent. He breathed like Tanya had taught Leo. 4 in, 6 out. Rivera watched faces more than hands. He saw pride, anger, boredom, focus. He also saw something like mutual respect. 2 chess players who knew the other could play, choosing not to knock the board. The officers finished, rolled the card away. The bar over the door went back to slow blink. The tear exhaled. That was 1 move, Dante said. We owe 1 back. What's ours? Leo asked. You'll see it when you don't see it, Dante said, half smile. He saw it at dinner. The phones stayed open but no one used them. The most valuable square on the board sat empty. No fights. No fuss. Just a hole where energy should be. Withholding is a kind of push too. In the booth, the warden walked behind Rivera and pretended to check air vents. Phones dead by choice? He asked. Looks like it, Rivera said. That's a payback, the warden said. Soft one. Better than the loud kind, Rivera answered. The second high came fast. A male officer with a clipboard and a straight tie arrived at 5:14 p.m., too exact to be chance. In his hand, a legal mail envelope for someone on the upper tier. The officer followed the rules. Open in view, shake, pass. The inmate resting behind that slot didn't rush. He placed the papers inside and let them sit. He knew what everyone knew. The envelope mattered less than when it arrived. By 5:18 the air thinned. You could feel it, the building leaning toward something. Rivera felt it in his wrists. Dante felt it in his back. Leo felt it in his mouth, dry as chalk. The third high crashed into the first cliff. The screens blinked. One by one the camera boxes went dark. Not fuzzy. Black. The red dots lit like tiny stop signs. Control? Rivera said. Power dip, Control answered. Hold position. The room obeyed. That was the war. The guards held their posts. The inmates held their places. Both sides listened harder. Above, a soft shusha slid again, 2 slow strokes. Rivera pictured a mop head, a laundry cart, a shoe with tape on it. He pictured a small thing moving because the cameras were down. He didn't know what the thing was. He knew what the moment meant. Someone had asked for this darkness. He lifted his radio. Non-essential movement, freeze. The tear froze deeper like a lake thickening in winter. Leo heard a faint knock in the vent. 3 paused 2. He didn't answer. He wasn't part of that conversation. He was part of another. Keep your shoulders down, don't stare. If the door buzzes wrong, step back. Dante whispered without moving his lips. If the lights come back up, breathe. If they don't, breathe slower. The red bar over the inner door flickered once and steadied again. The black screen showed nothing. The tower glass, far away, caught a last smear of daylight and let it go. Rivera counted to 20 in his head, the way he always did when things looked calm enough to be dangerous. On 19 he heard the softest sound of the day, paper against metal, a page sliding where a camera couldn't see. He had a choice. Call a team and break the quiet, or wait and see if the quiet told him a story he could use tomorrow. He waited. The lights buzzed. The screens blinked. And stayed black. Somewhere in the tunnel, a motor whined like it wanted to start and changed its mind. The red bar stayed hard as a stare. Control to C tier, the speaker crackled. We're still, hold, hey. The words chewed themselves into static. Rivera looked at the tier, then at the tower, then at the black glass right in front of him. He could feel the next move coming the way you feel a train before you hear it. He turned to the door team. No one opens a door for any reason until... A lock clicked at the far end of the row. Not their lock. Not his call. Every head on the tier tilted the same fraction of an inch. The silent war took a new shape as the bolt rolled inside the frame. And the wrong door began to open. The sound of that wrong lock still echoed in Rivera's head. For half a second he thought maybe the door sensors had glitched again. But the tone of that click, the deep, full metal roll, wasn't a mistake. Someone had opened a heavy tier door manually, and that was never supposed to happen without clearance. Control, he barked into the radio. Who opened cell 216? Static answered. Down the corridor, one red light over a door flicked to green. The lock rotated all the way, thunk, then stopped. Every inmate on the tier froze again. No shouts. No running. Just that heavy stillness before something breaks. Rivera's heart pounded once, hard. He motioned to Officer Daniels, who was already unholstering his keys. Hold up, Rivera said quietly. We don't rush blind. Through the slit window he saw movement. A shadow, thin and quick. It wasn't an attack, not yet. But it was intent. Someone inside that cell was testing what total silence could hide. That's how power worked at Pelican Bay. Control wasn't about noise, it was about timing. 2 hours later the lockdown was lifted. Control said it was a system malfunction. Everyone knew it wasn't. Rivera had been there long enough to feel when something was planned. Someone wanted the guards to react, to panic so the inmates could watch, take notes and learn. In the SHU, information was more dangerous than weapons. That night, in a dark cell 5 doors from the one that opened, Dante pressed his ear to the vent. A whisper came through the cold metal, bouncing down the line like a secret carried by air. Test complete, said the voice. Result? Another asked. They froze. No movement. Perfect red. Then it's time. Dante didn't know who gave that order. No one did. But everybody followed it. That was the hierarchy of silence. No faces, only voices, and every command obeyed without question. Morning broke gray and slow. The officers' break room smelled like burnt coffee and cold metal. Rivera stood by the window, staring at the fog hugging the yard fences. They're not testing the locks, Daniels said. They're testing us. Seeing how far we'll go before we shut down. Rivera nodded. They're patient. That's what scares me. By 10 a.m., whispers spread from cell to cell. No one knew who started them, but all said the same thing. C-tiers getting a sweep. It was rumor a strategy. The goal wasn't to warn, it was to exhaust the guards, make them move faster, check harder, burn energy on ghosts. That afternoon, a folded note was found behind a vent grate. The handwriting was neat, almost formal. It said, "The quiet is ours. When they look too hard, we disappear. When they stop looking, we return." No threats. No names. Just philosophy. Inside the officer booth, the monitors were back up, all except one. The feed for cell 221 stayed dark, pixelated at the edges. Rivera zoomed in. For a second, a faint reflection flashed across the lens. Not a person but a hand signal. 3 fingers up, 2 down. Then the feed cut again. That's when he realized it. The silent war wasn't just happening on the floor. It had made its way into the control room. The gang's reach had crossed the walls, the wires, the very systems built to contain them. In the yard, Dante looked up toward the tower. They think they're winning, he said quietly to Leo. They think control comes from that glass room. Leo frowned. Doesn't it? No, Dante said. Control comes from whoever can make the other side afraid to move. He wasn't wrong. At shift change, Rivera walked the length of the hallway. On the floor near cell 216, the one that had opened by itself, he noticed a tiny etching in the concrete. 2 overlapping circles. It looked meaningless, but he'd seen it before, on the inside of a confiscated letter last year, drawn faintly beside a coded message. It wasn't a doodle. It was a mark of coordination. A sign that the inmates were communicating not through sound or sight, but through pattern. That night, alarms didn't sound. Lights didn't flicker. But the war continued in silence. Inside the cells, small hands tapped walls in rhythm. 3 taps, pause, 1 tap. Morse for ready. Inside the control booth, Rivera typed a report he knew nobody would read properly. Unusual silence during patrol, he wrote. Possible coordination across tiers. He stared at the words possible coordination for a long moment, then deleted them. He replaced them with tension stable. Because at Pelican Bay, stability meant only one thing. Both sides were holding their breath at the same time. Just before midnight, a guard walking B-tier heard something faint. A whisper carried through the vent, "Tomorrow." The next morning, Rivera entered the control room and froze. One of the main cameras, the one facing the tier entrance, had been turned completely sideways. Not broken. Not unplugged. Just turned. And in its reflection on the glass, someone had written 3 words in dust. "We never sleep." The silent war had just escalated, and no one on either side was sure who made the first move. To be continued.